It happened in a quiet hospital room in Los Angeles, years after the world had stopped following her every move. Elizabeth Taylor, once the most photographed woman on the planet, lay still, her violet eyes closed, her breathing faint but steady. Nurses whispered her name in reverence, aware that the woman before them wasn't just another patient. She was a living legend who had burned brighter than any star in Hollywood's night sky. Her diamonds, her scandals, her love affairs, those were the images the world remembered. But behind them all was a woman who had known pain deeper than most could imagine. As she lay there, surrounded by silence, one couldn't help but wonder, how did the girl with the most beautiful eyes in the world carry so much tragedy behind them? Her story began far from the glare of flashbulbs and red carpets. Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor was born in London on February 27, 1932, to American parents who ran an art gallery. Her childhood was steeped in refinement, surrounded by paintings and culture, but the world soon became uncertain. With the threat of war looming, the Taylors fled England and settled in Los Angeles, unaware that fate had already chosen a dazzling but tumultuous path for their little girl. Even as a child, Elizabeth was mesmerizing, her deep violet eyes framed by lashes so dark they seemed unreal. People couldn't look away, and Hollywood took notice. Her entrance into film was almost inevitable. By the age of 10, Elizabeth was auditioning for roles, her charm undeniable. Yet it wasn't until she landed the part of Velvet Brown in National Velvet that the world truly saw her. At just 12 years old, she gave a performance so natural, so pure, that she became an instant star. From that moment, her life was no longer her own. The studio system shaped her every move, dictating how she spoke, dressed, and behaved. She grew up on movie sets, surrounded by adults who saw her not as a child but as an investment. While the world fell in love with her beauty, Elizabeth longed for normalcy, for a childhood untouched by fame. As she blossomed into adulthood, her beauty became her destiny and her curse. By the time she starred in A Place in the Sun, she had become the embodiment of Hollywood glamour. Her co-stars admired her, men adored her, and the press followed her like a shadow. But beneath the diamonds and dazzling gowns, Elizabeth was already searching for something the cameras could never capture: love. It became the great theme of her life. She would marry 8 times to 7 men, each relationship burning like a comet before fading into heartbreak. Her first marriage, to hotel heir Conrad Nicky Hilton, was meant to be a fairy tale. She was just 18, radiant in white, the world watching. But the dream soon shattered. Abuse, drinking, and despair followed, leaving Elizabeth heartbroken before she had even begun to live. Then came Michael Wilding, the kind and gentle actor who offered her stability, and together they had 2 sons. Yet fame and restlessness pulled them apart. Her third husband, producer Mike Todd, seemed to be her true match. He adored her, and for the first time Elizabeth felt safe. But fate intervened cruelly. Todd died in a plane crash in 1958, leaving Elizabeth a widow at just 26. The loss nearly destroyed her. In her grief, she found solace in another man's arms, Eddie Fisher, her late husband's best friend. The scandal rocked Hollywood, and Elizabeth was branded a homewrecker. But she didn't care about public opinion. She followed her heart, even when it led to chaos. That same fire would define her next and most famous relationship, with Richard Burton. Their love was explosive, passionate, and larger than life. They met on the set of Cleopatra, the film that became both her triumph and her torment. It was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, and Elizabeth was at its center, both as the leading lady and as the subject of endless headlines. The world was obsessed with Liz and Dick. Their love was intoxicating, their fights legendary. They married, divorced, and married again, each time unable to resist the gravitational pull between them. "It's impossible to live with him," she once said, "but impossible to live without him." Together they earned millions, drank too much, loved too fiercely, and lived too loudly. Yet behind their glamour was exhaustion. Fame had become a cage, and Elizabeth, though adored by millions, often felt alone. As years passed, health problems began to plague her. Back injuries, addictions, and illnesses would repeatedly bring her to the edge, yet every time she fought back. When people counted her out, she returned stronger. In the 1980s, Elizabeth did something few stars of her generation dared. She reinvented herself. She became one of the first major celebrities to speak publicly about AIDS, founding the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, at a time when few dared even say the word. Her compassion, once hidden behind diamonds and movie lights, shone brighter than ever. She transformed her pain into purpose, her losses into love for others. But even as she championed causes and reclaimed her health, time caught up with her. The woman once called the most beautiful in the world grew frail, her once commanding presence softened by age and illness. Still, her spirit remained unbroken. Those close to her said she never lost her humor or her flair for life. She continued to cherish her friendships, her children, and her memories of a life lived without compromise. Her home became a sanctuary filled with art, laughter, and photographs, private moments that revealed the real Elizabeth, far removed from the Hollywood image. On March 23, 2011, Elizabeth Taylor took her final breath. The world mourned the loss of not just an actress, but an era. She was buried with a note from Richard Burton and a small letter that she had kept near her heart for decades. It was said she arrived 15 minutes late to her own funeral, because, in true Elizabeth fashion, she had instructed her team to announce she wanted to be late for her own funeral. Even in death, she held onto her wit and her sense of drama. Today, her legacy endures, not merely through her films or her legendary beauty, but through her resilience. Elizabeth Taylor taught the world that perfection was an illusion, and that true beauty comes from surviving what should have broken you. Her private photos, the ones few have seen, show her laughing barefoot in her garden, embracing her children or gazing quietly at the sea. In those images lies the real story, not the diamonds, not the scandals, but the woman who lived, loved, and endured it all. So as we look back at Elizabeth Taylor's extraordinary journey, let's remember the lesson she left us. Even when the world watches your every move, the most powerful thing you can be is yourself. Her eyes may have closed, but her light will never fade. If you were moved by her story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let her legacy remind us that beauty in its truest form is eternal.